Now, what is going on? What has gone on at Villa Park? Let's turn to a man who kicked a ball around to some good practice and good intent for some time, and he now makes his living as an agent. Mel Eaves, good morning. Welcome to the programme. Can you believe where Aston Villa are?
I can't. It's taken a few years. It's not something that's happened overnight. But a good many of my friends are Aston Villa supporters.
Have they seen it coming, do you think?
Yes, yeah, it's been on the cards for quite a few years. Everybody said it was when Martin O'Neill went just before the start of the season, quite a few years ago now. And it's never recovered from then when Randy Lerner just decided to kind of pull the plug on really going for it after finishing sixth 3 seasons on the trot.
Yeah.
He then probably hadn't got the stomach, or various things happened that he didn't want to go for it, and then it's been downhill ever since then. And every manager has had an uphill task.
I mean, the thing is, that he's put the club up for sale, but there doesn't really seem to have been a... I mean, you know about people buying football clubs. There hasn't been a really serious bid, has there? I
don't know. I really don't know. It's a bit like you've got Steve Morgan has put Wolves up for sale. Jeremy Peace has put West Brom up for sale. Blues still hasn't gone through. So it's very difficult buying a football club. It's not straightforward, but I'm sure that there'll be plenty of people that would be interested in Aston Villa. It's a worldwide name. They've got a great reputation. It's one of the big clubs, traditional clubs in this country. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of people who would buy it at the right price. Now, whether Randy Lerner wants what everybody else is considering that would be wanting to buy too much money, that's the big question.
I mean, that ground, I mean, 30,000, 40,000 there, great. I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago to you and I that they were winning the league, they were winning European championships. And the last few years, I mean, there's been so many changes of manager, which can't be good, can it?
No.
Because when you do that, there's just no continuity.
Well, there's no continuity, but the problem comes, I think it's all started by, as I say, Randy Lerner's change of heart, change of position in how he wanted to take Villa forward and what investment he wanted to make. But also, behind the investment, there has to be some logic and there has to be some football nous, in my opinion, behind it, that's what's let Villa down. I don't think that they've had people at the top making the right decisions that have had the right football nous. Granted, one of the key things that you have to do at a football club, in my opinion, is get the right manager. But then you have to have the right process and you have to have the right setup around the manager, both from the top and obviously above the manager and below him. And that's what I think's let Villa down.
Were they too hasty in getting rid of Tim Sherwood?
Absolutely, you can see that now. Tim Sherwood at least had a real go. Obviously, he'd got Benteke there was the focal point, and he could build things around him, and that's what helped them survive last season. This season, they haven't had that. I think the recruitment process has been flawed. You've got Steve Hollis. They've been brave in that they've decided to change things. Steve Hollis has come in as the chairman and he's brought people with football pedigree, let's be honest, with David Bernstein. Obviously the big thing, good friend of mine, Brian Little, coming in and to advise.
Fans are thrilled about that, aren't they? Yeah.
As an advisor to the board, and I think that's a key decision. I think a lot of clubs miss out on that. I think they're frightened sometimes of former players coming back, especially what I call the non-football people, Bob. They get a bit, oh, well, we know best, but it's proved at Villa that they don't.
It is simply staggering to me that here we are this season, they've lost 22 games. They've only won 2, haven't they? The one on the opening day at Bournemouth, and everyone thought, hey, here we go. I mean, are the players not good enough? Do they not care? I mean, they brought in a lot of players from abroad. A lot of French players have come in, haven't they? And I mean, it simply hasn't worked.
No, I think that there's been a big disconnect with the fans as well. When you lose that, I saw that happen at Wolves for a while, and then they got that back a bit, and it's been the same at Villa Park. But you can't treat football fans as though they're ignorant and don't know anything, because the vast majority of fans instinctively know when it's right and when it's not. they might not be able to put their finger on exactly what it is, but they do know it's wrong. And I think that Villa have just got it wrong from behind the scenes. It's slow. They've got away with it for so many years. Now that everything's coming home to roost now, and they're going down. They've got to rebuild. They're making the right decisions, as far as I'm concerned, or good decisions in the structure of the club, how they want to go forward. The key decision now is which manager they get. You know, I mean, that is a vital appointment.
That's right. I mean, so many names have been mentioned. I just said there that Mick McCarthy, I know after the press conference at Wolves on Saturday, got a fine old grilling because he was one of the names. Steve Bruce was mentioned, Steve McLaren's been mentioned, Nigel Pearson. Now, Nigel Pearson seemed such an obvious fit, didn't he? When Tim Sherwood went, a man who knew what he was doing, a man who that job he did at Leicester last year. Remi Garde, I mean, terrific coaching qualifications. The guy didn't know anything or hardly anything about the Premier League, did he?
No, as I say, it came from the fact that they'd probably got so many French players there that he was probably going to be the easiest one to get on with the players. But apart from that, it was just the way that they'd set their stall out to run the club on a more of a continental basis. But they didn't get everything right. When whatever kind of system that you put into an organisation, everybody has to be singing off the same hymn sheet, and they weren't. It was obvious that Tim Sherwood didn't really, although he might have said, didn't really agree with some of the players coming in, and but he was stuck with them. It's more or less, well, work with those. Remi Garde comes in, work with what you've got. It's from what I can gather, yes, we'll get you some reinforcements in January. Didn't happen. It was hung out to dry, Bob.
There was a really interesting clip that we used on Friday from him from the end of January, when he was asked about that, and he said, well, when the team's struggling, it's sometimes difficult to get players to come here. We could have met with them, you know, on what they were expecting to be paid, but there were other factors, and that clearly was the board not giving him any money.
Yeah.
I mean, he, as you say, he got nowhere to go at that point, had he? Because presumably now, at the end of the season, there's going to be a wholesale clear out of players. Big money players, big contract players. They'll be off, won't they? And they have to rebuild. And they've got to bring in players who are prepared to, you know, get their hands dirty, effectively, and really fight, because it ain't going to be easy in the Championship, is it?
You're spot on, Bob, as you usually are. But look, it's a prerequisite. Players now, players in my day, just for the honour and glory of wearing the shirt, whether, you know, whatever shirt it was, going out there and being a professional footballer, for your own pride, you'd give everything. You've got 90 minutes to run your heart out. I think that's a prerequisite. The fact that they're getting paid so much money now as well, I can't see that that's, you know, when they say, well, yes, we want players to do that. I can't understand why they don't do it automatically anyway, Bob.
It's one of those things. I mean, you shouldn't have to say that to a player, should you?
Absolutely. You should not. That should not come into the equation. What should come into the equation is how good are they, how aware are they of what's required of them, etc., which then comes down to how they're managed, how things are prepared, etc., etc. But you shouldn't have to. That's the one thing you shouldn't have to question is
absolutely
their desire.
We'll talk some more after the break. One name. Who do you think should have that job?
I think David Moyes.
There we are, David Moyes. You heard that. I think we've pretty well dissected Aston Villa for the moment, Mel. And you were same poised to say something, were you?
I wasn't, Bob. No. I was just going to say, enjoying the chat, and it's just a sad scenario that we're talking about with Villa. Marvellous club, tremendous heritage. Obviously, I grew up, and you know, in the same era as when Villa won the European Cup, so I know all the guys connected with that, and it's sad to see Villa where they are.
If I can just move you on to this story that the Sunday Times broke yesterday about the doctor. Saying about all these athletes, cricketers, tennis players and footballers he treated, including Birmingham City was one he mentioned, with all these growth hormones and all sorts of things. When you read a story like that, I mean, is your first impression to go, we don't want this in football? Or is your first impression to stand back and say, well, let's just examine it a little more closely?
Well, first of all, yes, before making any comments, I'd want to know all the facts, exactly what's gone on, and really see what this doctor was actually doing with these. Did the athletes go to him because they were injured, they needed, or was it purely to get their performance levels increased or whatever? I don't know. So I haven't read the article. I haven't gone into it in any depth. So it's difficult for me to comment too much. I can generalise, but on that specific, obviously. Yeah.
I mean, I noticed, as we said, Birmingham City have very specifically distanced themselves from it. Arsenal and Chelsea and Leicester City have all said exactly the same. I suppose you can say, well, they're going to anyway. But when you're suddenly confronted, a newspaper lands and there's the story, it's very difficult, isn't it, to do other than say, well, this is news to us. Where are we going with this story? And of course, it hasn't been independently corroborated either, has it? That's the other factor in all of this.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you know, even working undercover, if you go in and you're filming somebody and recording it and they're saying it, then you can see why the papers run it.
Oh, I can see why the papers run it. Look, the papers are after news, and they're certainly after sensational news, because they want to sell papers. They want to try and dig something up that's going to cause controversy, and that's what this does. We've had all the incidents, obviously, with Sebco having his hands full with all the doping allegations and what's going on there in athletics, which we want to stamp out so that everybody's clean, and it's the same with every sport, really.
It's very sad, isn't it, that you think you can be watching somebody or something, and then you find out that they've been taking drugs to enhance their performance, because that's not winning, is it? It's cheating, full stop.
No, well, as I say, we've had that, and then there was the expose with the Eastern Europeans, which we probably knew about before. Everybody was saying when you saw some of the women shot putters come on, and you're thinking,
yes.
What's going on there?
Yeah. Well, as you say, that story will for sure run and run. Mel, thank you for being with us this morning. Thank you for your insight on Aston Villa. We wait and see. There is the possibility, distinct, that by this time next week there will be a championship side.